And we're back with page 5. They want us to use the slope-intercept form to graph the form of the equation. If you'll notice, it's not in slope-intercept form, so the first thing we're going to have to do is put it in slope-intercept form. So I have 5x plus y is equal to 0. I can move my 5x to the other side, which gives me y equals negative 5x plus 0, which looks like y equals mx plus b. Once again, the b is where we start on our y-intercept, on our y-axis, and the m in this case is negative 5 over 1, so that's negative 5 up, which technically means 5 down, because it was negative, over 1 to the right. So from this point, I'm going to go down 5 and over 1 to the right. You always want to start from that first point on your y-intercept when you're graphing and following the slope. So you always start from wherever that first point is. If my first point would have been down here, I still would have had to have gone 5 down and over 1 to the right. For the next one, they want us to do the exact same thing. This time they gave us 7x plus 5y is equal to 35. So I need to subtract 7x from both sides. And you get that 5y is equal to negative 7x plus 35. Once again, they are not like terms, so we can't combine them. Got to get the y by itself, so I'm going to divide everything by 5. And get that y is equal to negative 7 over 5x plus 7, because 5 goes into 35 7 times. So that means I need to start at 7 on my y-axis. Then from there, I'm going to go down 7 and to the right 5. So from here, I go down 7 and to the right 5. And then I draw my line. Problem number 21. This is where it starts to get a little bit more difficult. They ask specifically that you write in equations. That means our equation has to have an x and a y in it. And the given slope that passes through the given point, write the equation in the form y equals mx plus b. So they tell you what slope-intercept form is, but you don't use slope-intercept form. You can't just plug it into it. You have to use the information that they told you. They told you a slope and they told you a point. That means you're going to have to use point-slope form. Point-slope form is y minus y1 equals m times x minus x1. They tell you your x1 and your y1, and they tell you what your m is. That's why you use this form. That's the stuff they give you. Remember, I told you when you have an equation, you always want an x in it and you always want a y in it. Well, the x and the y that don't have anything with them, those are the ones that stay there permanently. So my y is going to stay a y. My y1 is the y from over here. So that's going to be 2 equals, they said m was negative 3 over 5. My x is x minus, because it's minus in the formula, my x1 was 3. So now all I have to do is get everything so that it looks like y equals mx plus b. So the first thing I need to do is get rid of these parentheses. So y minus 2 is equal to, I'm going to distribute my negative 3 over 5 to both things. Minus times a negative makes it a positive. 3 times 3 is 9 over 5. Then I need to get the y by itself, so I'm going to have to add 2 to both sides. If you got one of those fancy calculators, it'll probably go ahead and do this calculation for you. If you don't have one of those fancy calculators, you are going to have to do your absolute best to make sure you get a common denominator here. I know that 2 happens to be, if I put a 5 on the bottom, a 10 on the top, because 5 goes into 10 2 times. So instead of me using the plus 2, I'm going to use the 10 over 5. And 9 plus 10 gives me 19 over 5. So this would be my answer, because that is in the form that they asked for. Y equals negative 3 over 5 plus 19 over 5, because it was a positive. For problem number 22, it's getting a little more complicated. So this time they didn't give you a point and a slope. This time they gave you 2 points, and it's one of those things you need to have memorized. I know you're hating to hear that, but it's true. That anytime they ever give you 2 points, it doesn't matter what it is they're asking you for, you always are going to have to find the slope. So that being the case, I'm going to go ahead and write my formula for slope. If you write it every time you use it, you will memorize it faster. So there's my formula for slope. That means that I put in my negative 9 minus, because there's a minus in my formula, 10 over 5 minus, because there's a minus in my formula, negative 8. Once again, side by side means it's going to turn positive. That gives me negative 19 on top, and 5 plus 8 gives me 13 on the bottom. That is one nasty looking slope, but that's what we have to work with. Now that we have a slope and we have 2 points we can choose from, that means we can go back to our point-slope form. Y minus y1 equals m times x minus x1. My y1 in this case was 10. My m we found to be negative 19 over 13. X minus, because that's the formula, my x1 was negative 8. So y minus 10 is equal to, over here, minus negative is the same thing as plus, so that's going to be a negative 19 over 13x. And then a negative times this plus will make it a negative. 19 times 8 is 152. Aren't you glad you have a calculator? Divided by 13. Now, I understand that you don't like fractions, and Lord knows I don't like fractions. And it just so happens that this time they wanted us to write it in this form, which is your standard form. If that's the case, one of the rules about standard form is you're not allowed to have fractions. So the first thing I want to do is get rid of the fractions. Now that I've gotten everything taken care of and I've gotten rid of my parentheses, now it's okay to get rid of the fractions. So I'm going to multiply everything by my denominator, which is 13. And I do mean everything all the way across gets multiplied by 13. 13 times y is 13y. 13 times 10 is negative 130. When I multiply 13 times this fraction, it's going to make my 13 on the bottom cancel out, just leaving me with the top. Same thing over here. When I multiply this 13 times this fraction, it'll make my bottom number cancel out, leaving me with just the top. That looks much more manageable. Big numbers, but more manageable because we don't have any fractions looming over our heads. So right now, I need to make sure that it looks like this form. Not that it looks like y equals mx plus b, but this form also has my x on the left-hand side with the y. So the first thing I'm going to do is move that 19x. When I do that, that gives me a positive 19x plus 13y minus, 130 is equal to negative 152. I still have to make sure I get this 130 to the other side because all my other numbers are supposed to be over there where the c is. So I'm going to add 130 to both sides. And I'm going to get that 19x plus 13y is equal to a negative 22. And that would be your answer. And that's also the end of page 5. One more page to go. You can do this. Okay.